Welcome to the Developing Your Football World podcast. Today we're talking to Terry Cow, who has experience working in England and the USA. Terry is now back in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Enjoy the show. Okay, Terry, thank you very much for joining us. Where are you based currently?
Living in my hometown, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam right now.
And what's the current time difference from there to London?
It's 1:10 p.m. yours, right?
Yes.
So 7 hours without daylight saving, 6 with.
Very nice. And how long have you been back in Vietnam?
I came back last September. So, well, and when I say last September, I mean September 2020. I keep forgetting it's 2022 now.
Time's had no meaning the last couple of years, has it?
Pretty much, yeah. Like I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore.
I felt like that before the pandemic, but that's made it considerably worse, hasn't it? So what's your current coaching roles, if there are any, if there's any coaching going on in Vietnam?
Well, I would love to say I'm doing something, but unfortunately I'm not, because we just came out with like a 6 months lockdown. And then before that, it was like on and off, and schools were, on for 2 months, off for 2 months. So unfortunately, not doing a whole lot right now.
Now, you've worked in England and in the USA, is that right?
Yes, England and the US.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. But to begin with, I want you to paint us a picture of what football's like in Ho Chi Minh and also what it's like in the rest of Vietnam. Is there a big appetite for it over there?
Yeah, by far the biggest sport. People are crazy over the national team, even though we're not doing very great at the moment. Literally, like almost like every adult would have played at some point and probably are still playing. We have a ton of like little pickup pitches, 5 aside, 7 aside, for like $6-7 an hour. So you get a group of 10 people together. You pay like 70 cents each, and then you get it for an hour. So yeah, no, it's huge, and people really like watching and playing as well. You're gonna get Premier League games, on TV at your little average cafe shop everywhere in the city.
So are people mainly fans of the Premier League, or are they fans of other countries as well?
Spain and England are probably the 2 biggest leagues that people follow here.
So if I went there and people said to me, what team do you support? And I said Blackburn Rovers, would they then follow it up by saying, no, but who's your Premier League team?
I guess they would know Blackburn, and I guess they would have an idea that they're not in Premier League right now, because Blackburn used to be in Premier League up until 6-7 years ago.
2012, funnily enough, got relegated on my birthday, and then a few years later got relegated on my birthday again.
Wow.
Yeah, scars are still there. Nevertheless, that was the most offensive question I ever received from American kid. It'd be, but who's your Premier League team? Now I'd have to restrain myself from striking a child. How dare you ask such a But there's
no probably ask you which team you follow in the Premier League.
Well, I'm ticking that place off my list now. I'm not going there, but through lots of people are really keen on football, lots of interest in watching it and playing it. What kind of shirts do you see when you walk down the street?
United everywhere. Starting to see a bit of City as well. Chelsea's always been big here. Liverpool. I guess you're your average top 6.
Now, you said the national team is quite well supported. Would you see any kind of Spain, France, Germany shirts?
Yeah. People will play in literally anything. You get cheap knockoffs of any country you can think of at all the knockoff sports shops for $10 each. So yeah.
So what's the professional standard like there?
I don't know if I would even call it a standard, to be honest. But we have a professional system. There's I think there's 3 tiers. So there's V League 1, which is the top, V League 2, and then V League 3. Teams fold like every year because they run out of money. You don't really make a profit, running a club in Vietnam, professional club at least. It's mostly millionaires and billionaires with a hobby that pump money into the club. So the biggest clubs we have right now, like they get a lot of money just from their owners being mega wealthy, and then the other ones owned by the army. So yeah, I mean, we have a system. It's just that every year there's a bunch of issues, from like refereeing to like players not getting paid to clubs folding. Yeah, it's a mess. Let's put it that way.
Not the most stable environment then. So is there much appetite from Vietnamese fans, or do they stick mainly to European football?
Stadiums barely fill up by like 20-30% of capacity for V-League games. You get a few clubs which are very well supported. So Hanoi FC is probably the biggest one we have right now. We have Hoàng Gia Lai, which is another big one because they do really, really well in youth development. And then Viettel, which is owned by the army. So whenever those three play, you can expect a pretty good, sizable fan in stadium. But other than that, people just don't really go to games.
Now, what is Vietnam like for player development? Are there lots of good kids coming through?
So the current generation of the national team came up about 3-4 years ago when they were 18, 19, 20. Almost all of them were developed by the 3 clubs that I mentioned. Those guys put the money and the effort in. We also have what's called the give me 1 second here. Just escapes my head. There's an academy, I'll put it down. PVF, there we go, PVF. They run based on ECCC. So they actually hire coaches from England, specifically with a UEFA B or above and ECCC experience. So they're developing players based on the British system right now. And they've produced some pretty good names so far, which is interesting to see.
Are they effective at that? Because I've often found if you're the only club in the area doing things the right way, then your output is kind of diluted and you kind of held back by some of the others.
I'm going to go back and correct myself. I keep saying ECCC. I just remember it's actually EPPP, right? Elite Player Performance Plan. There we go. So they're using that. What was the question again? I'm sorry. Just had to correct myself there.
No worries. So I'm saying that in some places I've found if you have a club that by itself is doing the right things, but the rival clubs, the neighbour clubs are not, is this club you mentioned, are they still effective at developing talent, even though they might be the only ones that are doing it that way?
I mean, 70% of the national team players right now are from those 3. Someone say they're doing pretty well. Because they get kids in from like 10, 11. And most of those kids are from like underprivileged families. So they'll pay for their school, they'll pay for their meals, they'll live at the club, at the training facility, go home, every other weekend. It's actually a way for a lot of those families to, one, send their kids to a good environment because they get schooling, they get free meals, they get a home, and to also, get the burden of having to pay for them because they don't have that much money either. So yeah, they do pretty well. Those 3.
And is it typically kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that are filling up academies?
Almost all of them are, because the ones where parents are either middle class or upper class, they're not going to send their kids down the professional athlete path.
Yeah, those kids are destined to become doctors and lawyers and go study abroad, aren't they?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I'm technically a failure for not being, a businessman or a doctor or a lawyer in Asia right now.
How do you live with that shame you've brought on the family?
Don't care. But no, my parents were really cool with it. They just said, look, like if that's what you enjoy doing, then go for it. So
I wish a lot more parents are like that when it came to supporting their kids in youth football. I mean, we've all got examples of 99% of them are dads, but we've all got examples of those parents that are pushy and vicariously. So for British coaches going over there, are the opportunities predominantly in private schools, private academies, or are there chances to get into some of the professional clubs?
Except PVF, you're not going to get a job at any professional side here because the pay difference is massive. Most academy coaches at your average Vietnamese club are either ex-players or, I guess, just them knowing someone personally. And they get paid like 15-20 million dong a month, which is the equivalent of about maybe 700 quid a month, which is, a livable salary here. Like I could easily live on 700 quid a month. But they're not going to get foreigners in because you're going to pay them at least 1,500. So that's just not good investment for them. So jobs would most likely be with private coaching companies, even though they are really struggling right now because the whole COVID thing has been going on for way too long.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of places that are diminishing the amount of work they can do because well, depending on the country, they're not able to keep coaches on the visas. Coaches have to go home. They can't afford to pay the coaches because they're not running sessions anymore. They're not generating the income. But I think this might be the year it picks up again soon. And depending on the country, it could be in the next few weeks or it could be towards the end of the year. But what I am reading of all the different countries, every day I'm looking into how the jobs are going in different parts of the world. And I think by the summer, most countries will be close to what they were before in terms of operation. And so the opportunities for coaches will really start to pick up. And it depends on part of the world. There are some parts like Dubai that's just done really, really well. And there's other parts like China, which I can't see opening up to foreign coaches at all until 2023. So the kids that are in those private academies, I can imagine that they are often international backgrounds and they have a more privileged outlook on life.
Yep.
And that
I'd say 70% are very wealthy Vietnamese families, and then the other 30 are expats.
So you want them to put the effort in. Come on, lads, we're 2-0 down. It can be hard to reach them, but I think as a coach going over there or to any kind of position like that, it's one of them you have to just take it on the chin. I've been in several situations where working in those kind of private academies, and like you said, the parents are not going to be pushing them down a football route. That's not where their ambitions lie for their kids, and it's more like an expensive babysitting service. Or
pretty much, which surprisingly makes it easier to coach because parents don't really aren't that really intense about it. Because they just drop off their kids and go have a mojito somewhere for an hour and a half and then come back, right? So yeah, it's actually less pressure coaching here in terms of dealing with the parents compared to, say, England or America. America, most definitely.
So before we move on to those countries, I'll ask you, is there anything that we could take from Vietnam to use in English football or American football that would enhance it anyway?
Yeah, just the opportunity to just go play anywhere. That's really lacking in America right now.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm living in a compound and I literally could just walk across the street and join a random game. At least for adults, there's definitely not enough kids games here, but at least for pickup soccer for adults, that's definitely something that is widely available here. And I really wish that it was that available in America, except everywhere seems to charge you a hefty fee just to get a court or a field for an hour and a half.
Of course, well, if you make it part of your package that we're going to develop the best players in the area, and we do that because we've got state-of-the-art facilities, and because we've got state-of-the-art facilities, we need to ramp your fees up. And then the only places in town are the state-of-the-art facilities, and a lot of them aren't available for public use, and so the kids can't go out there. American cities are also designed, even the suburbs are designed for cars. So the local park is not within walking distance. Even if it were, most American parents in the middle-class suburbs are afraid of their own shadows. And despite living in some of the safest parts of the entire planet, will not let their 12-year-olds out unattended to walk to the park to play with their friends. And so that pickup culture is just not there. And I see it's declining in most of the Western world as well, but it's far more accelerated in the US compared to other places. So I wish you'd see more kids in the park and the streets just playing with their friends. It racks up the hours of contact time with the ball, doesn't it? And gets them to
it's so good to like just build like basic techniques, right? Instead of just doing it in a session on the post for like 15 minutes. If they can do that on their own on the street, like that's still practice.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that in America, and it's really disheartening to see.
Where did you go first, UK or US?
US for a year, UK for a year, and then back to the US for 3.
What was your first job in the US?
It was actually volunteering coaching rec soccer.
Okay.
I mean, I literally had just started out coaching, and I also when I did my first license, the E license. So no, I was just volunteering with the town program, coaching rec soccer. Had a blast. Like, kids were great. Loved them. Still actually really close to one of the families now. I mean, rec soccer, right? Like, no one cares. Just fun.
Well, there was a few parents in St. Louis that would care. They were keeping very detailed league tables of the 4 and 5-year-olds and making sure that they'd get to double figures before they played some of the crap kids. But there's always one that has to ruin it for the rest of them, and on the pitch demanding. Like, before I request that you turn into my therapist, let's continue down your story. So where did you go for your first stint in the US?
So I went to university in Massachusetts. I was in Amherst, which is a town of 40,000 people, 91% white. It was just like, a nice, quiet little suburb, which, passes fun, but also really hard to find good food, especially good Asian food.
Were those your first steps in the coaching, or had you been coaching in Vietnam?
Started at 14. I blame my mom for this because she bought me Football Manager instead of FIFA. Immediately got hooked. I think FM11 was the first edition that I played. Immediately got addicted. Started helping out with the middle school team when I just entered high school. And then basically organized a whole soccer tournament, which involved teams from 6 different countries, because I went to an international school. So we had like partner schools in different countries. I organized the entire tournament at like 17. And I got a job from there because one of the academies in the city saw what I was doing and then offered me an internship. So that's basically how it all went downhill.
Now, going to the US, what cultural differences did you notice in football terms from Vietnam?
Parents are a lot more involved, for better or worse. Didn't really have an issue with rec soccer because, come on, like if you care about if your 5-year-old is not doing well or not playing or not winning games, then you shouldn't even have a kid, But no, parents are just a lot more involved in America than they are here. Here they just drop off their kids for an hour and a half and then come back and pick them up, and that's it.
Oh, I wish that was more frequent. American parents are often like fans. And I think part of that is because they don't have local teams to support. So that void in their life that we have filled by being able to actually go and support a team, they don't. And so they place that emphasis on their own children.
living life vicariously through your kids.
Yes. What were some of the most interesting things you started to notice when you first went to the US, apart from the parents?
In terms of like the sport, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of emphasis on like technique and one-on-ones, as in like one-on-one coaching, which I really didn't understand.
So a lot of the private coaching, one coach,
yeah,
one.
Like even for like 6 and 7-year-olds, which is really weird to me at first because I didn't really understand it. Now I have a completely different perspective. It's not just not understand. I did test it, but that's a different story. But yeah, there's just a lot of like focus on like individual technique and like doing, like doing the right thing and like looking good and whatever. And I'm just like, but why?
So you don't think that 6-year-olds should be paying $60 an hour to spend an hour getting specific private tailored coaching?
Oh God, no! Like no. You could offer me all the money in the world, and I would never do a one-on-one session.
Now, there were times where I was offered money by people for certain requests with coaching their kids. And I think this would be immoral. If one sticks out, this guy I used to wear a "Make America Great Again" hat to practice, and he said, "I will pay you anything if you can teach my kid to take goal kicks." So it would take me 5 minutes to show him a few techniques which would maybe improve that, but you just need to get him to the park by himself, smashing balls. That's it.
Yeah.
Go to the edge of the box. Can you clear the crossbar? Go 5 yards further. Can you clear the crossbar? Just do that. I mean, I'd be ripping you off and stealing a living if I did that. But it's an expectation from a lot of parents. I mean, how did you cope with that over there?
I didn't. I distinctly remember when I had my first job after university, which was with a private coaching company in New Jersey, who shall not be named because I don't want to be sued. The parents really were a pain, but well, actually the boys side was good. I had under 8 boys, so yeah, that was good. The under 12 girls, they really, really, really wanted me to, teach them like proper techniques and all that. And when I say really, really wanted, that's to put it nicely. Somebody came up to me like at the end of the season and said like the girls regress, and it was a 10-week season. And I'm just like, how are you supposed to regress over 10 weeks?
Did you ask them what their metrics were?
To that degree, yes. I was like, okay, like from like where are we saying regress? Like, because you say regress, right? So it went from better to worse. So like, what was better and what is worse? And they're like, oh, we were winning games and all that, and like they were playing well. I'm like, yeah, but you do realize like we played like teams that were not like really, they shouldn't have played like at that level with us, right? And then we had teams that were just like way better than us, which is fine. It's soccer. It's 12-year-olds. Who cares? Some teams are going to be better. Some teams are going to be worse. But like you can't use that and compare that to like play against, a team that I remember there was this one team that put like 60 goals past like every single opponent and conceded like 3. So I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? But like they keep saying that, but like they never say, oh, like the girls had fun, or they learned something, something they didn't know before. Never anything like that. It's just like, oh, like they're not doing this well, they're not doing that well. I'm just like, where's the fun? Like,
why is fun important with kids?
yeah, right. Like, who needs fun anyways, right?
So, yeah, fun can wait until you're done in college. When you get your D1 scholarship, you can then have fun afterwards because you'll be earning 6 figures professional in whatever industry you've gone into. But Yeah, fun can wait. Fun's not for kids. Fun's for when you're an adult and you've been earning serious money.
Yep, gotta hustle until then.
Absolutely, 100%. It's all about the grind, isn't it?
England was a blast though. Like working with United Foundation, that was so fun because it was literally like 3 sessions every week for inner city kids. They just show up, they play.
What were some of the differences between that and the American kids?
Well, because the kids that were with us at the foundation, they can't really afford like proper training. Because inner city, like the entire point of the program was to give inner city kids an opportunity to play. So there was minimal coaching, like obviously safeguarding and stuff like that. Yeah, obviously, but other than that, we never really coached them. We'll like give them pointers here and there, but the whole point was so that they could play. And it was just so much fun because they genuinely like enjoyed that 75 minutes they had with us.
So you've already used the word enjoy when talking about kids in Manchester. It seemed like fun was not a priority when you're in Massachusetts. Why do you think that is?
Hate to say this, but money. One was completely free, right? And even when I worked with the local FA charter club, it was like the sub was like $750 a week. So yeah, like parents are not spending stupid money just for their kids to enter these so-called academies in America. They're not academies, they're private companies. There's no if you're an academy, you're supposed to have a pathway, right? Yep. That's the whole point of being an academy, is that you have a pathway for players to progress. What's the pathway with private coaching companies? The promise of D1 scholarship?
That's there might be some college scouts at one of your showcases when you are 16.
Yep, the what was it called? The talent ID camps.
Yep, those ones. It costs $400 or $500 a kid to play a game or two of a bunch of coaches who may or may not be paying attention.
Yep.
Yeah. And as you can see,
so back to the question. Hate to say it, but money. That's the main difference.
A lot of barriers for entry over there, which thankfully don't exist here, but I see some are starting to creep in. I think some people are learning from the American way, and they're trying to charge a lot for kit and facilities. That doesn't make the player. It's so much more than, I mean, that's the cherry on top, but it's not a necessary component of it. So so how old were you when you first went to England?
19, I think. Yep, 19.
So still very, very young at that point.
I loved it. Like it 19 was probably like the best year of my life, because I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I was living in England, went to watch Everton United like every other weekend because students get like £10 tickets. So, and I could drink instead of having to be 21. So there you go, best year of my life.
So a lot of watching football and drinking while enjoying your coaching, which is fun enough. That's why Brits go abroad, and yet you came over here.
No, like I would totally go back to England if visa wasn't an issue.
I know all about that. Now, did you have any misconceptions about England or English football before coming over, or what surprised you the most? What didn't you expect?
It was pretty much what I expected, because one of my best mates is British. I used to work with him here. So yeah, knew all about. Went to Ireland before. So had a sense of idea about what it's like on the British Isle. No, like it was pretty much as expected, which was amazing.
One of my best mates I lived with over in the US, American guy, we lived together for 6-7 months, and he was trying to understand English culture a lot more. So I showed him in-betweeners. I thought that was probably a really good induction. And so now he's a college coach, and he has to go to the airport to pick up players. A lot of Brits who've gone over, and he tells me that he tries his best in-betweeners impressions in the car when he's. So I think you've just flown all that way, and you've got some American guy sat in the front seat. Hey, look, boss wankers! And I can't think of what it must be like to experience that as a 18, 19-year-old player who's gone over there thinking this is some serious event, this is a big deal. And there he is, just firing off these in-betweeners references, but in a very dodgy accent as well. His attempt at English accents was terrible. Now, I'm guessing you're familiar with the in-betweeners.
Yes, I've seen the in-betweeners.
What do you think best reflects or best displays what it's like to be in England?
The banters, really. It's just a different culture, isn't it? I loved it, but like a lot of people will like take that as an insult. But I used. Sorry, go ahead.
When we go abroad and we coach in environments that are without other Brits, you almost kind of, like any muscle you don't use, it declines significantly, and you'll come home, see friends over Christmas, and they'll be making fun of you relentlessly, and you'll come back sort of disappeared because you haven't been using them, and a bit like if ever you've been injured and then come try and play football your first game back, you're just useless. It feels like that, and it's a very key part of our culture that we need to take with us.
Hey, good thing I stayed in an all boys, I guess, dorm in England. So yep, I got my initiation ritual pretty early on.
And did you pass your sarcasm level 1?
I don't know. I've not had a chance to be sarcastic with anyone so far, ever since coming back home, because nobody understands sarcasm here, especially in English.
So that would be a cultural adaptation that we would have to struggle with. We'd have to be quite straight with people when we talk if we went to Vietnam.
Yeah, because English, well, people speak English, but not to a level where like they can actually understand banters and sarcasm.
I
actually speak better than I speak Vietnamese these days. It's kind of sad.
I found a few kids like that in international schools that have to be taught in English, and they forget their own language, and you can see them struggling and their parents getting annoyed. So something that we found in a lot of different places is that the British tend to understate things, and compare that to the US, where everything is overstated and is amazing and brilliant. I think where if you said a kid's performance was all right or decent, in this country it would be seen as a compliment, whereas in the US and some other countries it would be seen as more like a negative reflection on their performance. Yeah,
funny you say that, because I definitely noticed that, because back in England, like parents would ask me, like how did little Johnny do? I was like, yeah, he's all right, and they'll be like, okay, good. If I do that in America, they would be like, what happened?
Yeah. Inquisition and reports are expected, and meetings are demanded. No. He did all right. Like it was good. All right. Not bad. All right. It was good. All right.
First time I spoke to my boss in England, that was the first time I went to the field, and she just looked at me and went, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. What do you mean?" And I realized, "You all right?" actually means like, "Hi."
Did you find any other cultural differences that were difficult to adapt to?
Come back to me in a bit, because I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but nothing's firing yet.
Sure, it's interesting to kind of do a reverse analysis on what do you lot think of us? it's an interesting perspective because every culture thinks they are the norm because that's the only culture you know. And so let's talk specifically about football and how it can be transported across borders. What would you take from England and what would you take from the US to implement within Vietnamese football to make it better?
I mean, the way your average Vietnamese coach still does things here is the way that we did things like 20 years ago. Lots of dribbling through cones, lots of unopposed, lots of like passing in a straight line. Although the issue becomes that it looks good to parents, and Asian parents, they want discipline. So if they see a bunch of kids with a bunch of balls, flying everywhere, they'll go like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the worst.
Same in America sometimes, to be honest.
One of the worst criticisms, but also best backhanded compliments I ever get was when a parent said, all you do is play games. I think, well, that's not true. But if it looks like everything we're doing is game-like, then that means my sessions are good, right? Because it all looks like football.
Right. Right.
There's still a lot of decontextualized, information scarce drills that are happening in Vietnam because they want to appease a parental expectation on what training should look like.
But also they believe in it, which is the part that really needs changing because coaching education is virtually non-existent here. You can't get on an AFCC license unless you're an ex-pro or you know people in the right places. It's not like an open course where you just pay your money and sign up and go do your course. It's selected. And there's just no grassroots education, really. And I really want to do something about that, but yeah, it's just been tough.
No real support from the federation.
No, they're a joke.
So we could import, let's think, some more open-minded coaches, more modern and progressive. What else? Anything from the US apart from the wealth and the facilities?
Well, see, because I work with the Red Bulls, and that's like a standard, like way up there. So you can't really like say that's your average American, development system because it's just so different. It's so British, the Red Bull system. So high school sport is something I would bring from America to Vietnam because high school sport is non-existent here. You don't play sports in school. Huh?
What benefit do you think it would have?
High school sport? A lot, actually, because school is such a big deal here. Like, kids will start at 7:30 and end at 4. It's not like your average, like, 8 to 3 school day. So, yeah, I think just an outlet for kids to just not have to sit in a classroom for 9 hours a day, just to do something fun. Because PE is looked down in public schools here. At international school, it's a different story, but PE is actually looked down in schools here. Parents don't care about PE. Like, they want their kids to learn the science or the maths.
Well, what jobs are there in PE? The high school sport, because of the school, the emphasis and the importance placed on school. But I imagine after 9 hours of school, surely you'd be too mentally exhausted to play.
Nah, my high school kids were mental. That was probably the best part of the day, really, because we had like 3 games a week. That was our schedule. Whether or not that's okay, I'm not getting into that conversation because I had no power over it. But no, they always really look forward to practice and to games because it's exciting. Like, it's actually exciting instead of just learning about some random math equation that you're probably never going to use again in your life.
I suppose the parents could make the same accusation. So when are you ever going to learn third man runs? Or sorry, when are you ever going to use third man runs in the real world?
Well, I mean, I'd say to them, there's a lot more to it than just that. But you know, I see where you're coming from if you use that reverse argument against me.
Just simply playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Usually understand the importance of sport, not just the technical and tactical stuff, the social and psychological development that is provided by it, which you often don't get in stale classroom environments. Is that kind of stuff underappreciated in Vietnam?
Very. The issue becomes because physical labor is kind of looked down upon, and sports is physical labor, isn't it? So even though they don't realize that, like, you actually have to think a lot more when you're when you're practicing soccer and then when you're doing like a math equation, because with a math equation, you know, there's a rule to it. There's no rule to playing soccer. You know what I mean? Like, every situation is different. Like, every situation forces you to think differently. You can't just use the same answer that you got for the same equation and apply it to a new one. So personally, to me, I think like sports do a lot more to help, you know, develop not just, you know, physical fitness, but, you know, mentally, socially, emotionally. I think it does a lot more than just sitting at school for 9 hours.
Reminds me of that proverb about judging a fish's ability to climb a tree.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is this a cultural thing then that is pretty much based on the class system? So if you work with your hands, you are of lesser importance and lesser stead in society, and you've got to have jobs that work with your brain.
Unfortunately. And I can guarantee you I use my brain a lot more when I have to write up curriculums than, like, say, at an office job 9 hours a day.
Yeah, I think that hugely undervalues how intelligent the best football players are.
It's like, especially if you're a coach, that you can't just like use the same thing that you've always used, right? It has to fit with your team. It has to fit with their ability. It has to fit with their age. And so, yeah, like there's just a lot more variables than just say like the same, you know, document over and over and over again. It just doesn't work like that. But people don't understand, like, we spend so much unpaid hours at home, like making sure that our paid hours on the field is going to work out, instead of just, you know, entering the office at 9, leaving at 5, doing the exact same thing you do every day. You don't really have to do anything at all.
Now then, let's look at it this way. We're thinking pre-pandemic, so back in the those glorious sunny days that we took for granted.
Feels like a million years ago.
Yeah, back then when we were bright-eyed and rosy cheeks, and we didn't know what wonders would face us in 2020. So think to back then, if I, as an English coach, were to come and work in Vietnam, what difficulties would I face in terms of adapting to the culture and adapting to the football?
Culture-wise, you're gonna have to learn how to ride a moped. I'm still so like Western. I have a car, and I actually can't drive a moped, so I actually drive my car everywhere, and it becomes a hassle because parking is like non-existent. But yeah, no, you're gonna have to learn how to drive a moped. You're probably gonna have to get used to the food as well, because we use a lot of spices and seasoning.
Oh wow, I struggle with that in Mexico, and the family still make fun of me. I am plain-ish when I go to Nando's. Anything above that, my mouth is on fire. So I know I would struggle with that. And I just have to eat bread and go to McDonald's every day in order to survive.
Also, probably going to have to learn how to communicate without like actually speaking English, because about 70% of people won't understand what you're talking about.
So we'd need to learn a lot of basic Vietnamese phrases, but could we still coach English?
No, I wouldn't say for coaching, because they kind of force you to coach in English anyways, because that's the whole selling point. The kids are, you know, training with an English speaking coach. That's another thing, because Vietnamese parents will send kids to like in private academies because they employ foreign coaches and they can speak English to them. English is hugely important here as a subject.
That, yeah, two birds with one stone. That is frequent across a lot of these places around.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a marketing point that has been used to death by private academies in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to call them academies. I'm going to call them private companies, to be honest.
But they have academy in the name, right? They've earned the title.
Yeah, everybody does. Football-wise, you're going to have an easier time because usually Asian kids, especially Vietnamese kids, are very disciplined, and they've been taught to like respect their teacher from a very young age. And if they don't, they literally get whacked with a wooden stick. I am not even kidding you.
How big is the stick?
It's like a wooden ruler. About this. That's acceptable punishment in Vietnamese schools. Decent. I'm pretty sure if you do that with a private company, you can get hired on your first day. But in Vietnamese schools, it's allowed.
Yeah. Does that make it harder to teach some of the ingenuity and creativity that is necessary to be a good player if they're that disciplined and that focused on listening and doing what they're told? Because in football, sometimes the players need to recognize when to go off script.
Yeah. I mean, they'll try their best to do what they think you're asking for, but it's pretty easy to overcome. You just tell them, like, you know, I'll allow you to, you know, do whatever you think is best in that situation.
So you can show them a few options, tools to solve the problem themselves.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can definitely like give them a few options, and they can choose from that instead of just doing like the one thing that they think you're asking for. Expat kids are different beasts. Like they are just like your average Brit. So,
well, I can think of what that means. So, do you see a lot of Vietnamese kids in the street, in the parks, that are practicing skills or trying to be like Neymar or Messi or Ronaldinho, doing the clever stuff?
Occasionally, yeah. I've definitely seen kids in my compound with a soccer ball just going somewhere and having a kick about. But it also really depends on where you live, because like I live in an upper class compound, so there's a lot of green space. Inner city kids are not going to get that opportunity because where they're going to go, right? Like maybe like in front of their house or like, you know, on the streets or whatever, but that's limited as well. And also it's kind of dangerous, so their parents probably won't allow it. There's mopeds everywhere.
Last one before I have to get off. I'm going to come back to that question from before about misconceptions that you might have experienced when you went to England. What might have shocked you, or what didn't you expect when you first went to England?
The kids, but not in a bad way. They were a lot cheekier than I thought they would be.
What, trying to nutmeg me when you're not looking?
Yeah, and also like talking back to you a little, which was fun actually. Like I really enjoyed that because then I can like pick on them too, and they can't say anything about it. But no, like I think British kids are a lot more expressive and a lot more open about themselves than say like Asian kids. At that point, I haven't had much contact with American kids. So yeah, that was something that was a little surprising, but no, it wasn't a bad thing. I enjoyed it. Coaching high school in America was a completely different story because hell, they gave me a hard time. But yeah, no, definitely the kids.
So I'm going to thank you very, very much for your time. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure.
After a couple of years of back and forth on Twitter, it's really good to now have a proper conversation. There's been a lot of validity in this, which I'm sure coaches are going to really enjoy listening to, and hopefully they start to see countries in Southeast Asia as a place to go. It's not just the typical incredibly westernized US, Canada, and Dubai. There's a lot of value in going to all sorts of places all around the world, and usually somewhere that's a bit more different is far better for your character and your coaching development as well. So I can't thank you enough for giving it your time and talking to me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Really enjoyed that, as always. It's fascinating to learn from great coaches and their different experiences and perspectives. We have lots more great guests lined up over the coming weeks. We're also always looking for recommendations so we can share the stories and insight of all interesting people that make up the coaching community. Coaches are the best thieves, podcasts are free, so let's continue the learning. See you next time.